The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Dan Eve, the Crypto Raptor.
Good evening from Blighty.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to Issue 1. Issue 1. Bitcoin slides to 26,500 amid surging US dollar. Record high rates are a nightmare for crypto firms. Yes, the Federal Reserve is not lowering the rate of treasury bonds, causing the price of treasury bonds to go higher and making it harder to borrow money. If it's harder to borrow money, it's harder to invest in risk assets like Bitcoin and could be a nightmare for crypto firms as they have to reevaluate or try to raise money in a bad market. Dan Eve, what do you think about the Federal Reserve not raising rates or raising rates again?
Well, it's good that the UK also hasn't done it. That information came out, I think, yesterday, and which is good for mortgage people who are on trackers like me, sucker. It kept on going up, but ultimately, the linking. I always see these articles and I think how they link the Bitcoin price to specific, specific events, and some of them obviously, are very significant. Obviously, rate changing is a big thing, and obviously it's hit the stock markets in quite a way as well. But you think Bitcoin is a global asset. It's not like something like a particular stock, right? That's traded in very much more in one country than another, like on the NASDAQ, for example. So you'd think that isolating small price movements down to a few events of a particular country, they should be less and less so nowadays, especially when you hear about and I quote Jane Alasnich, but saying in 2023, right, the 2022, right, the US in terms of Bitcoin adoption was fifth on the list and fourth on the list in 2023. With India, Nigeria, Vietnam being ahead. So you think to yourself, right, there's all these other countries there's El Salvador that's adopting it as a currency. Obviously, the volume's going to be a lot lower, but the impact of certain American markets, especially when you hear about the booming trade in Nigeria, for example, at the moment, and the amount of Bitcoin trading that's going on just all around the world, the impact of events in one country aren't going to have that much of an impact. But they, obviously, a lot of these analysts do. So, but it generally tends to be, I don't know, a bit more of a correlation does not necessarily mean correlation, causation, whichever one it is, right? The spuriouscorrelations.com. I always go back to that one, right, which is like the number of films that Nicolas Cage has been in and the number of people that drown in a swimming pool or something. Just because the charts correlate, it doesn't mean it necessarily that one has triggered the other, for example. So yeah, it's good thing. I think the rates are going down, especially for people that are actually borrowing money, for mortgages or even loans, and how that's affecting crypto companies more than ever. Because if the reins are so tight on loans anyway, crypto companies kind of come at the back of the queue because everyone thinks they are such high risk, especially with all the scams about, etc. But yeah, good thing overall, I think, lowering rates or at least not increasing them again.
Well, I don't know. It's kind of an amazing thing, like you're saying, Dan. The Bitcoin network is so solid. The protocol is good. We have second layer things like Lightning and Liquid, side chains, other options like that. Then at the same time, the United States and the rest of the world was hit by such an inflation mess that they're still trying to fix it up. So the Fed is going to keep rates high, meaning that treasury bonds are expensive and that borrowing money is also expensive. So it's bad for Bitcoin, the price. It doesn't, like you said, it doesn't affect Bitcoin, the network, the programmers, everybody else. But then we start to see this thing where if money's so expensive to borrow and no one wants to invest in risk assets, or companies like Coinbase that manage risk assets and that support the cryptocurrency industry, then those companies are going to have a hard time borrowing. They're going to have a hard time growing. And then the crypto industry is going to have a hard time growing. So it's a very interestingly bad time to have this happen with the halvening coming up next year, which everyone expects will boost the price. But if the economy keeps going this way and if the treasury bills keep staying high, causing the Fed to keep the stock market low, to keep the caps on the borrowing, we might not see the halvening bump. We might not see it, and it may be a larger issue where, like people have said before, what if Bitcoin goes down because of this and this and that and that, and it could be a collapse of the price, while the network, the technology, everything else is fine. Could be some exciting stuff.
Yeah, and then there's also that theory of what must it called I shouldn't quote this now because I can't remember the name. But the depreciating gains, right? So the impact of the halvening going down each year because the supply shock isn't as much, right?
It is definitely less and less than it used to be. The first one going from 50 to 25 is a huge reduction. Now I think we're going from 6 to 3, or we're going to 3 to 1.5, something like that in that range. So yeah, it is not as much as a reduction.
But then to counter that, there's adding in BlackRock, all these huge other the $15 trillion of assets that are now pushing for spot ETFs. So will we see that kind of boost Bitcoin beyond the depreciation of the halving?
It's only going to happen after you sell. They're definitely acquiring these assets. They're waiting. Everyone thinks it's a conspiracy like the silver markets or whatever it is. But yes, once they've decided that Bitcoin's good, as we're going to talk about in our next article, everything will suddenly seem fine. And you'll wonder how people could have ever doubted Bitcoin at all. But it is a very interesting time to be a Bitcoiner, as the Chinese proverb goes. We're going to go and go to the exit question. We're going to bring out the magic 8 ball early. Dan, Eve, will the price of Bitcoin be higher or lower this time next week?
Higher.
And now Magic 8 Ball will virtually shake it, which could also cause a bubble. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? The ball says count on it.
All right.
So there you go. A little optimism from the Magic 8 Ball, and at least it answered our question this week. This is a great time for everybody to give us a thumbs up. We usually get about 30 thumbs up a show. So if you got a thumb, give us a thumbs up. Moving on to issue 2, why Bitcoin mining might actually be great for sustainability. And as I was talking to Dan about the last issue, now that BlackRock and KPMG and all these other companies are all getting into Bitcoin, suddenly the environmental problems around Bitcoin have gone away, and they've figured out all kinds of new things that they can do with Bitcoin, like capturing the energy from flared natural gas, capturing other energy from renewables that can't be used at the time, and just providing support for the environmental network, for the power grids and other things. Thomas Hunt, what do you think about Bitcoin mining actually being good for the environment? Well, if you've been watching this show for a while, we're pretty much keeping it up just so we can say, I told you so over and over again. As we told you on this show many times when we discussed the environment, Bitcoin is not bad for the environment. In fact, Bitcoin is such a complex thing that it can actually be good for the environment in some cases by causing people to seek out more renewable energy or cheap or unused energy, such as the leftovers from when you have to flare natural gas. Or when you can't run your hydroelectric plant anymore, but the water's still running and your batteries are full. You can use some of that energy. They've also said that it could make renewables cheaper by allowing these companies to profit from this lost energy. So if you've been watching this show, you know that for years. It's been very interesting to see Bitcoin attacked as the boogeyman, all the nonsense about how much energy is using. It's bigger than Ireland. It's bigger than Argentina. It's bigger than Iceland, Argentina, and Ireland put together. And the whole time we're looking back in reality and we're saying, hey, it costs as much as the PlayStation 5 that doesn't turn off. It costs as much as Christmas lights in the winter, and it could have a major effect on society and humanity. It's a brand new form of currency we've never had before that's not controlled by a central bank, has a relatively reasonable halvening structure for the inflationary deflationary aspects that you can tell in advance. It's unlike anything anywhere. There's no way to stop the halvening. And I think that's what the media is going to learn. But yeah, it's very interesting to see them change their mind now that BlackRock is in the business. Not only is Bitcoin not bad for the environment anymore, it might actually be good. Dan, we've talked about this many times over the years. What do you think about Bitcoin actually being good for the environment this time?
Well, there's a funny twist to this, right? That BlackRock have been very instrumental in the pushing of ESG companies, and suddenly it's almost as if since they announced their spot ETF, again maybe correlation, not causation, all that, but since they announced they're going for a spot ETF, there seems to be a lot of positive news concluding about the mining of Bitcoin. So maybe there's some palms being greased, not allegedly, not I'm not saying that, but you know that may have something to do with it, right? How this positivity is now coming out about Bitcoin. But then again, is it just the fact that there's the velocity of all the evidence that we've reviewed in the past that shows why Bitcoin is good for the environment, why it is good for soaking up renewables? And you think about the equivalent of there's always like a petition about that you see about certain food that goes to waste, or like milk that's been subsidized by the government, and they're going to throw away 20,000 liters of this perfectly good milk because that's just what they have to do. And when I used to work at McDonald's, they did the same thing. Actually, it was, in fact, I don't know if I can say this, but well, it was years ago. But that the manager literally used to walk around and used to spit in the burger so he could do the waste count. Like, this was crazy. It was like really bad. Anyway, the food didn't go back into the thing. This was at the end of the shift. But anyway, there's all this stuff about waste, and Bitcoin's the perfect solution to that. It takes things like the excess methane from landfill, flared gas, and just generally unused energy. And it's the only industry where you can very portably take the machinery and go and just use that power to mine Bitcoin and get some money back from the energy that would otherwise just go absolutely nowhere. And although there's these newfangled ideas of gravity weight storage, and probably the most efficient one is actually pumping water uphill to then pump it downhill again, and generate electricity. Bitcoin literally makes money out of that electricity and does it very, very efficiently as well. So that's something that's obviously extremely positive. Also the fact that you think about how manufacturing plants, right? They, back in the day, there would be a huge amount of waste from any old thing that was being manufactured. And now the more processes become lean, every shred of any resource that could be given as an excess is used. If it's a chicken plucker plant, the feathers go to the so-and-so, they get sold on, and the chick's skin will go in something else, and then the gizzards and whatever will go in something else. And every smidgen of everything gets sorry, some flowers fell off the window. So every smidgen gets used. Nothing is spared. No waste is spared. And we're just seeing that now with Bitcoin being able to soak up all this renewable energy that would otherwise go to waste. So to argue that it's bad for the environment, when in definitely in very specific situations, let alone as in the broader way, that Bitcoin's actually very good for the environment. Methane is it 30 times more poisonous than or bad for the environment than carbon emissions. So obviously methane's a lot less of the atmosphere, but still you're soaking that up with that would otherwise just go straight into the atmosphere. Same goes for flaring gas. So it's got a plethora of good points about it, from becoming an ESG asset for companies, building new energy markets, the stabilizing of grids, and balancing using the excess energy that there is, and then being able to shut off quite easily when there is a demand, a spike in energy. And obviously the contentious part of that is that people are still moaning that the grid has to buy the energy back, but this is a paying customer. This is a contract. The grid isn't just going to screw itself over just for a bunch of Bitcoin miners. It doesn't work like that. That would be lunacy. So it's silly to make up things that would, and go, oh, so-and-so is getting money back. Well, yeah, that's part of the system, right? Other companies do it too. Go and knock on their door and moan at them. But yeah, I think it's ultimately just very, very good for the environment. And we're seeing more of that. So once again, when is Tesla going to start, accepting Bitcoin again? and other companies started doing it on the basis that, and this is going to be the real turning point, that we're now using Bitcoin miners to do X, Y, and Z. Like all these, especially in if there's industries where there's excess energy that they have got spare that they could be using for Bitcoin mining, and then they can turn their carbon heavy industry into a carbon neutral one via Bitcoin mining. That would be a real cool turn of events.
Well, and I saw an interesting tweet recently about this where the guy showed, I forget what it's called, but it's like a heavy load machine. And it's the kind of machine that's designed like basically to waste energy when they have problems with the energy grid and they have to turn these machines on. And what they said is that machine costs like $30,000. And a Bitcoin miner would only cost $3,000. So even, and that machine doesn't produce energy, it just wastes the energy. It's an energy wasting machine, an incredible invention, really. And that a Bitcoin miner could replace this and do better. So it's interesting to watch each one of these myths about Bitcoin fall. They're like, Bitcoin's only for drugs, Bitcoin can't scale, Bitcoin's bad for the environment. And yes, the whole time we're very clearly Bitcoin advocates here, but watching these myths just collapse and fall over and over again. And this whole thing where these weird guys on the internet who keep saying this over and over again are right. And the supposed experts at Forbes and all these other investment companies and investment magazines are wrong. So I think it's really fun to see that and to dunk on them once again, that Bitcoin's not actually so bad for the environment and it could actually be good for the environment. It's just great to see these things turn around. And for whatever it happened, if it's BlackRock or some secret conspiracy, or now that they've bought enough Bitcoin, they can be fans of it. It's the same thing. So, and it is really interesting, like you say, Dan, this focus on sustainability. As you guys know, I've been traveling a little bit recently, and you go on these airplanes and you usually get, a little plastic bag, has a little plastic knife and fork in it, plastic containers everywhere. They're doing more and more now with kind of like a wooden spoon, like a wooden fork, wooden knife. The bag is paper instead of plastic. And if you think about these businesses where they use, like, let's say, 100 pieces of silverware every day on the airplane, and the airplane flies 300 times, 3 times a day, 300 pieces of silverware, and they're wasting that every single day. If they could just switch to wood or to, like noodles for straws, basically replacing these things, we might actually be able to turn this environment thing around. We might actually be able to do something by getting to these points where the people use it. Like you're saying, Dan, these companies could have wasted things in the past, but now are finding ways to reuse them, ways to repurpose things, and to see these Bitcoin miners go into the energy sustainability game, or whatever ESG assets mean. I forgot already. It's an ESG.
Social governance.
Environmental social governance. That's still not a great acronym, but still, the fact that we can help out is great. It's just so surprising to me that this whole time, as a scientific project, these facts about Bitcoin have been true, and you could have looked them up beyond the media, beyond the, like, it takes more energy than Ireland or whatever, and no one did. No one bothered to look them up. No one cared. And then now, only as the big players are getting in the game, are people starting to change their opinions on Bitcoin and the environment.
But again, is without going down the okay? I'm not alluding to the next article, but like the word conspiracy theory on this, I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. It's a likely theory that could be happening, right? That the tide is turning on opinion because the big players are entering the game where the money is, and there's, I don't think that's a conspiracy theory. I think that's a perfectly good theory.
Yeah, that's self-interest, right? These businesses are now invested. They've now made this a part of them, and then now they have to defend it as well.
Let me cross your palm with gold, sir. And Bitcoin is good for the environment. Yes.
That's all it took, is just a little bit more gold. All right, let's keep moving. Check out worldcryptonetwork.com. We've got some new videos lately. These are the AI generated shorts, and they're doing surprisingly well. One of them got 1,700 views last week. You guys can see these on our YouTube page as well. They're about 30 seconds long, so they're nice and short for the younger generation. And the hopes is that some of them will actually subscribe and watch this show. So if you're watching now, push subscribe down below and check out worldcryptonetwork.com, where we've got 3,123 videos that you can check out, including all of the new shorts. Moving on to issue 3. Nick Carter doubles down on the theory that Bitcoin was invented by the NSA. Yes, another topic that we've talked about over and over again, the possibility that Bitcoin was created by a government agency, or even the NSA. This theory seems very strong, especially given that the NSA had published papers on cryptocurrency. It's fascinating to see Carter dub this as a potential lab leak hypothesis. And it's like he's proving one conspiracy theory with another. And if you like that, I've got a moon landing that you won't enjoy either. But yes, what do you think, Dan, on the idea that Bitcoin could have been invented by the National Security Agency?
Um, again, I think this is so. I don't think this is necessarily a conspiracy theory. I think it's just a theory of how there's plenty of theories, right, of how Bitcoin came about. Obviously, you could say the conspiracy because it's a government based thing. Is that probably where most conspiracies get labeled? Is if the government specifically involved? But it's it's an interesting set of circumstances, right? So
I think it kind of has to do with the mystery aspect of Satoshi. By disappearing, Satoshi has robbed us of any kind of like Bitcoin origin story other than the posts that he made, the emails that he replied to, the documents that we have from Satoshi. So from there, I think everybody puts their tinfoil hats on because no one believes one person could do all this, maybe three people, maybe a group of people, maybe a government agency full of people. So I think it's tough there.
Yeah, but it's Daniel Roberts who unearthed the kind of the paper, right, that Nick Carter commented on, which is it does sound pretty, it's called How to Make a Mint, the Cryptography of Anonymous Electronic Cash. And the authors and references were basically NSA / GCHQ, who are obviously the kind of lead encryptors, right? Obviously also the NSA, and then there's the sort of side bit. The side dish is the Tatsuaki Okamoto, who's kind of sounds a slight bit like Satoshi Nakamoto. But everyone's going to have their theories, right? I don't think we'll ever find out who it is, but there's always going to be new theories popping up. Whether they're conspiracy theories or not, I think is the conspiracy theories. I think it gets thrown around too much nowadays. It's like one of the words, like there's obviously crazy ass ones, like the no offense out there because there's a few people, but the flat Earth thing, which is obviously a bit out off the wall crazy, right? In terms of conspiracy theories and NASA, like painting, I don't know, all sorts of random stuff on rockets that are made of plastic bottles and all sorts of crazy things that I've seen. But yeah, I think this is quite a reasonable a theory. Ultimately, I wouldn't. Maybe I'm not calling it a conspiracy theory because it kind of was one of my pet things that I thought that kind of makes sense, right? About the waning power of the dollar eventually, as all the other big countries become superpowers themselves, and there's a lot more competition in the field. But ultimately, we're not going to find out. So we're left with is crazy little footprints. Who knows? Maybe AI will become so sophisticated that all this crawling effort from OpenAI and all the companies will eventually piece together somehow in a way that humans couldn't have done it by holding this amount of memory and RAM. To be able to figure out who it actually is, or at least point towards who they, who they could be if it's a group or the individual. But ultimately, we're not going to know. So all we're left with is theories. But I'm going to say I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. This one, I think it's just a theory. I think it's a reasonable theory that's not too kind of batshit crazy.
Well, what I like about this one is if it is the NSA, we might actually find out about it eventually. If things go, as we've talked about on this show many times, towards a Bitcoin economy where everything is denominated in Bitcoin, one Bitcoin is worth millions of dollars, people are trading 0.0000 all the way down, and everyone's using Bitcoin for everything, I think at a certain point, the NSA writes a paper about this and says, hey, US government, we've got, a million or however many Satoshi coins there are, Bitcoins just sitting here. And, once they've admitted that, then everyone can stop freaking out about them selling them all at once or intentionally ruining the Bitcoin market or any kind of that thing, because it's just the government. If they put on we're going to sell them at, 10 coins a year or 100 coins a year or whatever, And the United States maintains being the richest country in the world, all these kind of things like the NSA, everyone gets pay raises, rewards. I mean, this is a huge victory for the agency if it's true, and especially if they control the Satoshi coins. And it would also take a lot of the pressure out of Bitcoin. People would be like, oh, it's invented by the US government. It's not so bad. But they just had to do this huge runaround to get everyone to adopt it in the same way that Vitalik Buterin's Ethereum got everyone on proof of work and then switched to proof of stake. Maybe the government felt we have to convince people of Bitcoin on its own merits, and then later on let people know that it was secretly a government project, which I don't have a problem with. I don't have a problem with the government, but I know the libertarians out there pounding their fists and smashing their coffee mugs and all kinds of things because this is the ultimate betrayal for them. The libertarians and the cypherpunks who got there early and believed that they were fighting the good fight and ruining the government with Bitcoin and so forth because the government wouldn't be able to raise funds, suddenly find out that they've been essentially working for the government all along. So this is a pretty brutal theory, probably hurts a lot of people's feelings. I think they'd much rather have it be invented by a shadowy coder or someone like a super programmer or a team of a super programmer and a younger guy and an older guy. All these kind of other theories would be better than this one. But it's interesting to see how this one keeps popping up. And now we have Nick Carter, a modern Bitcoin advocate, selling it and putting his heart and soul behind it. But again, they don't really have any evidence. The evidence level here is very similar to what Newsweek used to accuse Dorian Satoshi Nakamoto of being Satoshi Nakamoto. Your name is the same. What Nick Carter's essentially saying is that his name sounds similar. Shintoshi Nakamoto is similar to Satoshi Nakamoto. Therefore, Chuck E. Cheese invented Bitcoin. I think it's a very tough road to go down without any evidence. And again, the only way we're going to get evidence is it comes from the inside, i.e. the NSA revealing it, perhaps to show everyone the million Bitcoin they have and to say that they could finally build 50 Smithsonian museums in all 50 states and that it didn't matter that they sold the Silk Road coins. That was nonsense. They didn't care at all about those coins. Dan, Eve, exit question, force prediction. Who is Satoshi Nakamoto? You don't have to name names. You could name a theory, like if you like the old guy, young guy, economics guy theory, or if you like the NSA theory, or CIA, or space aliens, important theory to know. But here it is, Dan.
It's someone who was so good to cover their tracks that you probably wouldn't know who they were publicly beforehand. They I don't know. I think they may have been forever in the under shadows, right? And just I don't know. Yeah, maybe we'll never know because it's someone that wasn't kind of famous or in the spotlight beforehand. It was just some psychopath coding the most ingenious money he could. They could. She could. It could. Alien could.
Now, I'm going to go ahead and date myself here, but I remember back when the New York Times published the Unabomber's Manifesto, and it seemed like he was on top of the world. He had sent letter bombs to multiple people. I don't know if I don't think anyone was hurt, but he was definitely a terrorist in the fact that he was sending bombs through the mail. But he achieved his aims. He got his crazy manifesto printed in the New York Times, the paper of record. But getting that printed, drawing attention to his ideas and his thoughts and the way that he spoke through his writing led to his brother saying, wait a minute, that sounds familiar to me. And that's how they caught the Unabomber. In the same way with this Satoshi thing, I think he, she, they, whatever it is, has been very smart not to publish anything more. They published all those emails. They had other announcements and public messages and things. But since then, it's been radio silence because the more evidence, the more information you put out there, the more chance that even though you're the cyber super coder hiding in the darkness, someone's going to recognize it. And that reminds me of a guy who I met at a party once, or someone in college who always used to code that way or always used to say those things, and it'll narrow it down. It's amazing that after how many years we've been in Bitcoin now, at least 10 years, Bitcoin's been out about 13 years. We still don't know who Satoshi Nakamoto is, and we haven't gotten closer. Personally, I would stick with I like the three Satoshis theory. The young guy who's a really good coder, the old guy who's like kind of an all-around guy, and then an economics guy. Because there's just so many decisions made in Bitcoin, and decisions made as far as we can see now, 10 years, 13 years out, decisions made properly, decisions made for the long haul. The fact that the halvening structure has not been adjusted, the fact that the block size raise and changing the way Bitcoin works was fought off to keep it, whole and protected, where you could run it on a small node or a small server. These are amazing that these kind of decisions have lasted 10 years and seem to continue lasting. So I think it's a very complicated project. I don't know that it was government or lab leak, but I always enjoy discussing it. And let us know in the comments or in the chat what you guys think, if you have an answer for the question of who Satoshi is, if you like the three Satoshi theory, the space alien Satoshi, or again, without any evidence at all, you just want to say Satoshi's a woman, which you can do that if you want. And I can say Satoshi is trans. I also have no evidence on that. It's just very fascinating the way people adopt people into their group and then start printing up t-shirts. And there's just no evidence one way or the other. I can't say Satoshi's a man either. Just space alien is just as likely. But it's a great story, and we keep talking about it.
Yeah, ultimately, it's just good that we don't know who invented it, because we don't, But I rarely do quote the Bible, right? But one thing is like, don't idolize false idols. Something
don't shit where you eat.
Never get high on your own supply.
There you go.
That's not the Bible. That's notorious BID. But yeah, it's the false idols things, right? And we don't need Bitcoin doesn't need a Vitalik. It doesn't need a Charles Hoskins. Do you know who I am, Ensign?
Yeah. Give unto Satoshi that which is Satoshi's. That's a little different, though. We better move on to issue 4 before we talk about religion. Issue 4. Your NFTs are actually, they're exposing themselves a little bit here, finally totally worthless. Yes, a new report from industry researchers find that 95% of the once hyped crypto assets have hit rock bottom valuation. Obviously, my first problem with that is, what about the other 5%? That means that 5% of NFTs have value? What kind of report is this? I thought you hated NFTs. So yes, the media is here to tell you that you're stupid, and that you're stupid in reverse again. So this is one of those classical articles that sadly I think we're going to be referring back to in a year or maybe 2 years. And we're going to say, you know what? They were a little short-sighted on NFTs, or as I call them, digital collectibles, blockchain collectibles. Collectibles have value if people are willing to pay for them. The other thing that gives a collectible value is rarity. What's so nice about these digital assets compared to anything else, like a baseball card or a stamp or whatever else you want to collect, you can verify the rarity of these on the contract, on the blockchain, and it can never be changed. It's amazing as a collectible. So if we were to say that let's say there's like 50,000 or let's say 200,000 early NFTs, and that the only ones that are worth anything are the early NFTs, and there's 50,000 of them, they're going to go up in value again, because people are going to slowly collect them until there are none left, and then the prices are going to go up. I don't know if they're going to go up to where they were during what we now could call the NFT bubble, where they were kind of crazy, but there's a possibility, because of the global network of collectors, the amount of people that can gain access to them, the ease of storing them. You don't have to buy a vault or a lock. You can store them on your Trezor or on your laptop or anywhere you want. It's very easy to store. The fact that they don't become damaged, NFTs don't become damaged in a fire, they don't get torn corners or wrinkled paper or anything like that, they still seem like an incredibly valuable collectible to me on all aspects except the current price. And when the media starts dumping on things, and when they start saying things in the headline of the article, actually, finally, wait a minute, so you've been rooting against these collectibles the whole time, telling everyone they're worthless, dumping on them, using all your power as the media to crush this new form of collectible. And once again, collectibles always have some kind of collectible value. People are always telling me about the tulip bubble. It still costs money to buy tulips in Amsterdam. You know that, right? They never went to zero. Beanie Babies still cost money on eBay. And now there's become a whole grading system on the quality of the beanie and if it's been used and played with, how well it sits, which is the same thing that happened to tulips. Nicer tulips would be traded for canal houses, which is a pretty sweet deal in today's day and age. Dan, what do you think about NFTs? Are they worthless, or is this another case of the media dumping on someone until they finally killed them, just like they killed Bitcoin so many times? And then at least some, obviously 5% already, of NFTs actually having value.
Well, when you went through the Beanie Babies thing, I suddenly got like nostalgia to playing Pogs. Right? Can you remember Pogs, the little discs? So
Alf is back in Pog form.
They still have value. I might actually get some just to check them out. I actually look in some pictures now. They're incredible. But they are, they're collectibles, right? And not all of them have value. I think there's because there's so much overproduction, right? If you think about NFTs, like they're really, even though they've been around for a long while, they're going through their first real, like proper mainstream post pump cycle, just like shitcoins did in the past. Really, the big shitcoin year was 2013 when they really started to come up. But even back then, if you think how hard it was to, because I often pondered the idea of could I be in a project that created a shitcoin back before shitcoins were known as shitcoins, if you know what I mean, when it was just like, could we have an alternative to Bitcoin that's not Bitcoin, blah blah blah. Anyway, it was bad thoughts, Dan. But anyway, back then, you needed a developer. It was quite hard. There was a lot of work involved, and the same really with minting Ethereum tokens back in the day. You still needed a bunch of expertise, and it cost a lot of money. Whereas the real boom, I think, for NFTs, which came in like 2021, it was so easy to mint them that anyone could do it. These were copy paste contracts. So the market was inevitable. It was inevitable that the market would become completely and insanely oversaturated. And if you were to think about how the landscape would be if, and I'm probably going to get hated for saying this specifically, but as an analogy, but the proof of work that had gone into NFTs was a lot more required, right? It wasn't so easy to copy and paste and be able to create your NFTs. Then the markets wouldn't have been oversaturated and we wouldn't have seen this 95% drop. It would be significantly less because a lot of the projects actually doing it would have to have proper skin in the game. It would, be a well thought out and planned experiment rather than someone who's just cloned a bunch of, properties of a face with smoking a cigar and whatever and wearing a hat and all these funky little things and then just being able to try and sell 10,000 of them. Then exit scam. There would have been a lot more legitimacy, I think, behind the NFTs, and we'd be seeing a lot less of them. But we're getting the same thing that we did, right? Which is the prices and volumes are low, obviously a lot lower than 2021. So we're hearing all the obituaries and the NFTs are dead, and these extraordinarily loaded headlines like I can't even what it is now. Like that's like your NFTs are actually finally totally worthless, and that's just in my opinion. And it's just such a loser thing to say, like to be that much, against something that you're almost, the smug in this guy, as he's writing the article, he's literally farting into a glass and going, oh yeah, their NFTs are worthless now. And Rolling Stone does have some pretty loaded articles against cryptocurrency in general. Sorry, you were going to say something, Tom.
Oh, I saw a great post by the artist and NFT artist X Copy, and he said, "I guess my NFT is worthless," and it was a CryptoPunk that he'd bought for like $500. I was like, "Well, if you bought it for $500, it's not worthless. It's still worth more than that." And for a lot of these NFTs, people that bought them early, bought them before they were popular, people that bought rare Pepes or whatever it was, they're still crazy up. Like, yes, you're not 10,000 times up. You're like 5,000 times up. It's still a pretty good up to be on.
Yeah. And it's the same as people who bought Bitcoin, when it was, $20,000 peak 2017 and who were crapping themselves when it was $3,000 and we had the same obituaries and and that side of things. But photos and filters and Photoshop apps didn't kill photography. Video didn't actually kill the radio star. There's plenty of those still about. I think there's a lot of doom and gloom when it comes to new industries and new markets and things. But the Rolling Stone magazine has generally been quite anti-crypto, right? And obviously you can tell with this extremely loaded article. And they failed to include certain things like the fact that actually when this article was being written, one of the things that was defying the slump was the Coindesk Culture and Entertainment Index, which gained after some really strong performance of their NFT platform, Immutable X. So I'm not pushing that. I don't have any of it or anything like that. But these are things that it fails to sort of mention, that there are legitimate sounding projects that are actually doing quite well, rather than the pump and dump carbon copy things. But the thing about this article, I think that I got to read this little bit out. NFTs, which became a major controversy, and this just, again, it's just so how loaded it is and very badly researched as well. NFTs, which became or maybe I should read it in a more depressing tone. NFTs, which became a major controversy as they peaked in popularity, their environmental impact. Non-fungible tokens are minted on the blockchain, a process that requires energy and bought and sold in marketplaces that run cryptocurrencies mined with computer rigs that have a significant carbon footprint. But minting tokens carries a cost. The Dead NFTs report observes that the nearly 200,000 NFT collections with no apparent owners or market share identified by the study caused carbon emissions of equivalent to the annual output from 2,048 houses or 3,500 cars. Is that it? Is that literally it? What a waste of analytics and effort researching that, especially when actually, like it or lump it. But obviously Ethereum went proof of stake, right? So proof of stake and Ethereum being the biggest market for NFTs and Polygon the second biggest market, there's no more mining involved. So they literally don't know what they're talking about anymore. Like they're not including the very pertinent facts that would otherwise prove their silly headline and stuff wrong. I'm not I don't have any NFTs. The only one I did try and buy was a Pepe, and I bought the original print or one of one print, and then the artist sent me the NFT to the address that I used, which wasn't my address. So I couldn't. So the NFT's gone now forever, and I can't get it. So which is very sad. So unfortunately I'm not in it, but I can see the value of some of the things like the ticketing systems, the things like that, the club entry and stuff. I think there is value at the end of the day. If people are going to pay for it, it's a free market, right? That's how we learned about Bitcoin, is this free market, and I can buy this Bitcoin even if you crazy people in the treasury team that I talk to about Bitcoin all day think I'm nuts, and even though you're the money experts and I'm not, you should listen to me about Bitcoin. And they thought I was crazy talking about Bitcoin. So, I think NFTs do have a lot of purpose. And thinking about Bitcoin, Bitcoin is like the original collectible, right? It's the one that you can prove that you actually own. It's the first chain, number one, and obviously it's the most secure chain. So having these other things that are collectibles, why not let people collect them, right? If you don't want to, if you don't want to spend your own money on buying an NFT, don't spend it. But I think guarding the gates and moaning about other people owning NFTs is a bit silly, really.
Well, as David Mamet wrote in the fantastic film State and Main, you have to make it yourself if it's fun. If you don't make it yourself, it's just entertainment. So they discount all the fun that we had with NFTs, all the fun that people had collecting these, buying them, selling them, speculating, the dreams that they had that, whatever stoner weirdo crypto kitties number 5 would be worth millions of dollars. That was a lot of fun. And they don't take that into account at all, that people had these fun dreams. Well, some people bought them too high and they bought them too low and all that, but there was a lot of fun that was generated, and they don't take that into account at all. Also, I wanted to go through, I think the NFTs market's doing fine. I logged into Reddit the other day, unfortunately, And Reddit's doing little NFL-based Reddit collectibles, which is exactly how I saw this market. Anyone can now make collectibles. They can make unique items that they could send to your address that you could own, or like Dan, if they send it to the wrong address, you could never own and is completely lost. This is a really fun idea, creating digital collectibles. I've seen just recently, I try to watch all the NFT articles. I've seen Casio watches is getting into NFTs. They're going to make collectibles. Porsche is doing collectibles. All these other companies have done collectibles, and these are all at little cost. And it makes still, in my opinion, one of the greatest collectibles ever. Can't be damaged, perfect inventory. If some of them are lost or digitally destroyed, we can verify that, such as with curio cards. I think card number 26, there's only 111 in existence, but six of them got stuck in the bad wrapper, so they don't exist. So now there's like 105 possible in existence. So I think it's going to turn around eventually. I think this is one of the articles where the media wants so desperately to be right. They want so desperately to chase these terrible collectibles away and all the people that made money off them. But it's not going to work. I think that they're going to come back. I watched a great movie recently called like Welcome to Macintosh. I think it was a 2008 documentary about Apple and Macintosh. And they showed this guy, and he's got a garage and a closet and an upstairs and an attic, and his whole house is filled with Apple computers. And what he started out as is he would get them as junk. He would do a job for a company. They'd have 30 leftover Apples. They wouldn't want them. He'd take them in as junk. And I saw the same thing happen with old video game cartridges, like Nintendo cartridges. You could go to the pawn store or the record store, and they'd have them there for, $3, $5, really low prices for these things. But like all things, the more time goes on and the less of them that people can actually get their hands on, they go up in value. All of these Apples are now priceless. Nintendo cartridges, especially the good ones, are very expensive. And in the same way, these NFTs, especially the oldest ones that you can prove on the blockchain, whether it's Ethereum or Bitcoin or Polygon or wherever you keep your NFTs, you can prove their age, you can prove their date, you can prove that it truly is part of that collection. That's a really good collectible. Like, I don't know why the media is arguing so forcefully against the idea of collectibles. Yes, they go up and down, they have bubbles like the tulip bubble or the Beanie Baby bubble. And I know they want this to be a one-way death bubble for NFTs, but it's just like with the internet. When they were like, what's an @ symbol? Or what is this internet? Do I have to dial in? It's not going to work for them. Betting against technology never seems to work out. But I also think it's interesting, as we talked about last week, what's going on with the stoner cats, as Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis tried to make a TV show and somehow implied that the NFTs would have value because they're making a TV show. They got struck down. They've been declared a security, which is hilarious, with Bitcoin and Ethereum not being securities and stoner cats of all things being 100% now a security. But I just read another article about a filmmaker who wants to make a film, and he's going to finance it with NFTs by selling NFTs. So again, this idea of creating a digital collectible that has the value that someone's willing to pay for it. And we don't know what that value is. We sell it for $10, we sell it for $100 as a fundraiser for the movie or whatever it is. And it just happens on the other end, whether it's incredibly valuable or not that valuable and just incredibly rare. But I think they're being way too fast to judge on this, patting themselves on the back a little too soon to really think that the NFT thing is over. Again, if they want to really prove that they're worthless, stack down $1 million and go try to buy them all. Oh, you couldn't buy them all for $1 million? When you started buying them up, other people noticed and they started buying them up too. Maybe they're not worthless. Maybe they have value. And again, it's collection by collection basis. I don't know. Obviously, hundreds of thousands of NFTs have been made. But still, to dump the whole market over this, just very short-sighted.
Yeah.
All right, Dan.
I think it's loaded, right? They're pretty against crypto in general, so I think we know what side they're sort of on until Bitcoin becomes good for the environment, right? And then they'll be going, oh, these NFTs were amazing. These the minting of these pooping cat NFTs generated enough electricity for 7 houses in Namibia.
Well, and I do love the idea that we worked so hard to convince them that Bitcoin had value because of the network effect, because of the structure of the halvenings, because of the way the network worked. Didn't require a middleman, all of these kind of things. And then we had to go through a whole second round of convincing them that these collectibles had value because of, like I've said, you can send them around anywhere in the world. You don't have to store them. You can prove that they actually are the collectible. They actually fit in sequence. It's provable. They're hard to destroy. It just must be so frustrating for the media if they are, as we've predicted here and in the past, wrong on this again. So you were wrong on Bitcoin and all the cryptos having value. Then the NFTs went way up and you said, no, they're terrible. And then you dumped them and dumped them and dumped them. And then if they're wrong on this again, it'll be quite something to see. But again, no investment advice here on NFTs. There's far too many for Dan or I to know which ones you should buy. But again, my general theory that the earlier they are, the older they are, antiques become valuable. There's this guy has a box full of Apple computers and I'd take any one of them. And all you had to do is save them. Other people took the original iPhone in its plastic container and stuck it up in their attic, and they can get it out 20 years later and sell those for big money. So it's very interesting what a little bit of time and a little bit of scarcity will do to a collectible market and turn something that used to be just, nothing. Like we had a whole computer lab full of Mac classics. We had like 30 of them. And now 30 Mac classics, in your garage. Oh, that's a sweet deal. And, not so much for the PCs, but still, even an old PC, guy showed one with a diskette lately. And I was like, oh, that looks really nice.
Yeah, with the little locking mechanism.
Yeah, I could see myself buying one of those. That's kind of a real throwback. Whereas at the time, you sold all your computer equipment to buy new computer equipment, or you gave it to a friend that needed it or another family that needed it because computers were so much in demand. They're not, now everyone has a computer. So I guess they just want newer, faster ones. But
it was only about 6 years ago that I threw out some old like Amiga games. They weren't in mint condition, but they had the box on them. And I remember keeping them and I just thought, man, that was really dumb because they could actually be worth something.
It is strange. Yeah, I got rid of my Sega CD cases a long time ago, and I probably should have kept all those stinking cases, but they were plastic and hard to carry. But that is the difference of what makes a valuable antique versus a less valuable antique. And again, just like antiques and collectibles, it's worth what someone will pay you for it. Yeah. So we just you have to sell at the right time. But I think we're running out of time. Dan, do you have a prediction or a story of the week?
Oh man,
I don't think I have one either.
There's no one else to ask first. Oh geez, I can't really. I never. Everyone always usually talks about like worky stuff, and I can't because I'm under an NDA. But what else could I talk about? No, the only thing I could say is that my son started school, and it's just really crazy how time flies, and cherish all the early moments as much as possible. So I'll give a soppy thing that's non-crypto. So
it's pretty amazing. Dan and I were talking about before the show. I think it's been about 5 years since we went to Riga, Latvia at the Honey Badger conference. So it is so amazing how time flies and how quick it moves. So yes, you definitely have to appreciate your time, appreciate your people, be a little nicer to them, thank them, be grateful. I think that's a good message there, Dan.
Indeed.
I don't have a story of the week. I enjoyed watching Winning Time on HBO Max. It's a story of the 1980s Los Angeles Lakers and their challenges against the Boston Celtics, Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Larry Bird. A fantastic series. John C. Reilly playing Jerry Buss, the owner of the Lakers. Unfortunately, it's been canceled by HBO. They were unable to promote the show properly with the writer's strike. And so the company just put it out there. And of course, no one watched it because it wasn't promoted. And the company used that as an excuse to cancel the show. So it's very unfortunate. But if you want to check it out, there's 2 great seasons of Winning Time. It's not really a documentary. It's an acted out show, but it feels like a documentary about the 1980 Lakers and Celtics. Definitely check that out. I saw that cool movie, Welcome to Macintosh, about the Mac, and I saw another great one called Atari Easy to Learn, Difficult to Master, which has several interviews with the founders of Atari, and just very interesting to read about the old days of computers and to watch these movies. So you guys can check those out wherever streaming movies are played. I think we're about done for today, Dan. Anything else you want to add?
I was just gonna say, didn't Atari bring out a token? I'm almost certain they either brought out a token. I think
Oh
I'm
yeah, they had an online video game type system, and again, Atari itself, the name has been sold several times,
yeah.
so I don't really know what to say. Atari, the company, it's certainly not Warren Bushnell, the original guy who sold it to Warner Media, but yeah, they had a token for a while. I think you could play Pac-Man online or some version of Pac-Man if you had the token. But yeah, it's been interesting to see how they keep it up with the relevancy. I think they're making a new video game like Atari at 50, and they want me to buy it like I bought all the other Atari collections. I don't know. I'm getting tired of collections. But yeah, it's all the different games and all the different versions, and you can play them. And it's really neat. They're trying to keep the company and the idea alive, but it was definitely a special time. People that played Atari 2600s and Nintendos and video games back in the day, just what an adventure it was, going from block graphics to more realistic graphics to even Doom and Quake. And I would definitely recommend again that book about John Carmack and John Romero, who invented Doom and Quake and Wolfenstein 3D and a lot of the other stuff that we enjoy today. It's a great book.
That nostalgic floppy disk noise that kind of set everyone up for the iconic internet connecting. Like, oh, have you seen that? I don't know if you've seen it. It's really cool. There's like a guy who gets a bunch of floppy disk machines and he makes music. So he's got like 100 of them, and they're playing these incredible tunes, but just like all loading at certain points. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Definitely seen some of those. They're pretty cool stuff. I think it was Tainted Love is the one I'd seen. It's a while ago, but it's because it's a lot of like bump, 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 bump. And it's a very recognizable song that they could do with the kind of sounds they have. But yeah, right now we're saying, hey, that's great. He's using the floppy disks. In another 5 years, we'll be saying, I can't believe he destroyed so many floppy drives. I can't believe he did this. They belong in a museum. And then maybe they'll be saying that about NFTs too. I don't know. Let us know in the comments. Say hello. Give us a chat. We're going to go check out the chat after the show. But thanks to everybody for joining us. We'll try to have some more guests for you next week. We're probably going to stick with the Friday time, going back to normal here. But we just have to gather more guests. So we're going to work on that. And until next time, bye-bye.